All right, so this video is to show you how to do a good peer review on an AP research paper. It's going to be two parts. The first part, I'm just kind of going to take you through a few pages, how I would go about using my sample essay, the kind of notations I might make, and the things I'm going to look for. And then we'll look at the feedback form. Before you do your feedback form, it's helpful to do this kind of first read through, just kind of checking for general things like formatting and clarity to better understand what the overall intention of the paper is and the overall message of the paper is. Doing that first can be helpful in terms of developing a opinion before you get to the feedback form. So the first page that I have up on my draft right now is a title page. And while I could start writing about things that I would fix about this, you might not know what a title page should look like. So this would be a great time to look at your sample essay. So this is the sample essay from your level 2, and this is an example of what it should look like. So looking at this title page, again, it has the title, so I know that's what it is. If I go back to my draft sheet, I can tell that there are some discrepancies in terms of formatting. If it's supposed to look like this, I got to put notes on this page to show that, or to inform this writer what should change. So the first few things I notice are on my sample, there's nothing up here at the top. So this whole section right here should not be on their title page. It looks like they're using the running header, which would be part of their body. So that shouldn't be that or at all. I'm just going to write a quick little note so this person knows that that should be removed from this page of their paper. Going back to my sample, this formatting looks much different than the rest of it, so I'm going to do a few other notes. It looks like this is more like a Times New Roman, whereas this person might be using Times New Roman, but it's a much bigger size. So I'm just going to put a little note down here that their title should go near the middle, and that it should be Times New Roman, size 12, and double spaced. Again, I'm just getting that information from my sample essay because theirs should look like this one. And so they have their title, and then further down the page they have what looks like the course title, the date, and the word count. So I'll put another little note down here that they need course, date, and word count. And so looking at this, they do have a word count, so I'm just going to draw them a little note to mention that that should go down there. Now, because this one is pretty different than the sample one, I might also suggest that this writer takes another look at the sample. Specifically for the formatting. So as you can see, the way that I'm kind of going about this peer review is I have my draft that I'm marking up, but I'm frequently paging back to this sample to figure out what should it look like, because we're not all experts in AP research, obviously, and we may not know what it should look like, but our sample is giving us that information. So title page, this is a good example of a peer review. I've pointed out the formatting things that are wrong. A couple other things that I'm noticing here are some capitalization issues. So I'm going to go through and highlight those and maybe leave a little note about capitalization. But beyond that, these notes should be enough for this person to correct this page. So let's go on to the next part. Now this one has this header again. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my sample and see if that's something that is on the sample's abstract page. If I look at the sample's abstract page, there's a page number and a title, but that's it. So if that's the case, I'm going to again cross these things out because the page number should stay and this can stay. But if we're talking formatting, clearly there is something different. The other thing I'm noticing is that this should be single space according to my sample. Otherwise, the font looks right, the size of the font looks right, and let's see if we have any questions as we read their abstract. This study looks at research This study looks at research towards how the health and safety in workers is maintained in slaughterhouses and meat packing plants in Nebraska and how they have varied within the past 5 years. Right off the bat, this is kind of an awkward wording at the beginning where they say a study looks at research towards. Grammatically, that's a little bit confusing, so I might just put an AWK for awkward wording so someone knows that they have to go ahead and fix that part. And then the next thing I noticed in this sentence is instead of having the numeric 5, it should actually be written out as 5. The next sentence says, also, if there is an appropriate amount of news coverage towards the slaughterhouses, or do they need to cover more of what the meat industry does to health and safety of workers, showing if the news is being biased or unbiased in a positive or negative way? So this is a sentence fragment, meaning it doesn't have a subject and a verb. It's also missing a few other things. For example, like it should have a comma after also. So also, if there is an appropriate amount of news coverage towards the slaughterhouses, or whether would make sense here, or whether they need to cover more of what the meat industry does to the health and safety of workers, showing if the news is being biased, unbiased in a positive and negative way. I'm going to actually highlight, I think, this whole sentence because, again, we're having a problem with awkward wording in there. If I were to read that out loud, and as I did read it out loud, it was I kind of stumbled over my words. So I'm going to highlight that sentence so they kind of come back and give it another look. Prior research shows that the statistics of health or safety in meatpacking plants and slaughterhouses, that is a fragment as well. It doesn't say, it says prior research shows the statistics of health or safety in meatpacking plants and slaughterhouses. I don't know what they mean by shows the statistics. If they're implying that there are statistics that are high or low, it's just really kind of an unclear sentence. So again, I'm just going to give this one a highlight. Take another look at the clarity on that particular sentence. The meat industry is known to show very dirty conditions in the past, which determines the condition of a worker's health or safety. The only thing I notice in this sentence, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, is this S is possessive because it's talking about the worker's health, so I'm going to add an apostrophe. And then the health and safety of the workers and the cleanliness of the building can also determine the quality of meat being produced in their companies. I don't see anything glaringly wrong with that one. So far in this abstract, they've kind of gone about building in the context of the issue it's set. According to some articles, the meat industry has improved dramatically with health and safety, but nothing shows how the workers are being affected. I think this expression, some articles, is really kind of vague. I might discourage them from using that particular phrase. And so again, if I'm going to ask them to reconsider it, I'm going to highlight it. Because just saying according to some articles, it doesn't have much credibility. So I'll even add that as a note so they can see why I highlighted it. Research does not show connections to health and safety and also how those statistics are being presented to the public to open the public eye towards the meat industry. Data was collected through many databases and news article analysis, pulling me towards a content analysis, research design, and method. So this, I'm going to go back, and if I look at their abstract, just to check if first person is okay, this person used I multiple times. So for the draft, I'm not going to make a note of that because that seems to be appropriate in this case. An alternative that I do see people use instead of I and me is they might say pulling the researcher towards a content analysis, research design, and method. But what this part right here is, like I said, previously the abstract was talking, I'll even write a note. I'll change my color though because this is just kind of me thinking out loud. But their abstract provided context, and then now they provided the method that they were going to use, particularly this content analysis. The content analysis method is a usage of qualitative data. My qualitative data comes from databases showing statistics of the workplace injuries and health concerns covering the health and safety aspects of my research. This will tie in with people's perceptions that are described in new coverage. So we have a run-on sentence here. To fix this, they could either add a period and then a capitalized this, or they could also use a semicolon to correct that. So I'll put a little note for them to look at my side comment. This will tie in with people's perception that are described in new coverage. I'm not really sure what they mean by in new coverage, or if it's supposed to be news coverage, but I'm going to highlight that so they come back to it. The qualitative data comes from information that is given in news articles covering conditions in the meat industry, and also the amount of new articles. I think they mean news here too. So I'm going to write a little note that says news, and I think that's the same mistake they made previously. So the amount of news articles that cover the meat industry. In this study, meatpacking worker safety and health and news sources were included. Initial research results show the comparison of health injuries and illnesses do not vary much and stay equally the same within all meat industry companies, and that the news articles show negative, unbiased news coverage towards the health, illness, and injuries in the meat industry. This means that there is not a serious concern in the meat industry when coming in the injuries topic, but in illness, according to news coverage, there's a problem with the illness spectrum. So just reading that out loud, in all honesty, I can't really kind of pick out what they're saying. It's a little bit hard to follow. But I do notice a couple things. Here they have another run-on that they either need to use a period and a capital letter, or they definitely need to come back and add a semicolon. They're intending to kind of share their conclusion here, what they came to, what they found in their data. But I am struggling to kind of pick out what that conclusion is and how it relates to their initial statement. So I'm going back to the first sentences. The study looks at research towards how the health and safety in workers is maintained in slaughterhouses and meatpacking plants in Nebraska, and how they are buried within the last 5 years. So I guess even just based on the abstract, one question I'm having is that I am unsure how this conclusion fits their initial question. So I might just ask them to clarify that as best they can. And then they have keywords. I believe this abstract doesn't have keywords, but I have seen them in essays before, so I think that's fine. However, if we do look at the sample, there's definitely a break, meaning that this should be a new page before they go into the introduction and before they kind of move on to that next section. So I've done just kind of that first title page and the abstract. This is what I would call a pretty detailed peer review, looking for not only small mechanical things, but I'm also kind of paying attention to what is the argument they're setting up to begin with, and kind of tracking the pieces of their abstract as I go based on this sample one that I've been kind of using as my reference. So I would say your first step in this peer review is to do exactly what I just did. Read through the article, get a feel for what the argument is, mark it up as you go, and then move on to the feedback form.